We're joined today by Ruben Gallego, Congressman Gallego, who's running a very spirited race for the U.S. Senate in Arizona, the battleground of all the battlegrounds, right? Ground zero in this 2024 elections. Ruben, welcome, and give us an update. How are things going out there?
Oh, gracias, Simon. Look, it's going well as possible. Look, we are a battleground state. It's going to be tight no matter what. There's a lot of very optimistic polling on my race, which is nice, but it's not where we are. But we're working everywhere and working every vote. And the reason I think we do have success, our polling does have us in a slight lead, is because we're not just talking to Democrats, we're not just talking to independents, we're talking to Republicans, we're talking to some of the reddest parts of Arizona. And we're also reaching some parts that just don't really ever get attention and that are Democratic areas. Some of our kind of, Native American communities that don't get any consistent outreach from Democrats until the last 2 weeks when we finally realized, like, oh my God, we need a couple thousand more votes. Or even the Latino community, where for many years the Democrats have taken advantage of, and we're making sure that we are talking to them consistently and understanding that there is a big community there and they have very different, feelings. And because of that, we now have more than 45 former elected Republicans and independents that are endorsing us. We have, more that are coming out, some, current elected Republicans that are coming out endorsing us. We have excitement wherever we go. We have the Latino community that feels that they're part of this election. It's great to go, and I live in a kind of what's called traditionally Latino neighborhood. So it's great to come out into my neighborhoods and see families come up to me and say how proud they are that I'm running and how their kids look up to me. And it feels great that I'm able to kind of show that, that this country, this world is part of their life now. And, we also have Republicans that are appreciating the fact that we're willing to talk to them, that we're willing to, come to a middle ground with them, even to the point where we, have found ourselves working with the police union. We have the largest police union endorsement in the state now. And, we're talking about how we can do better community policing together. So these are the things that, we've been doing now for almost 20 months. It's been a heck of an election, but we're doing the kind of work that you need to be doing every day, talking to voters, talking to community leaders, putting yourself out there. And I think that's what's showing in the results. And we have to, because you got to remember, Arizona still has 200,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. And so we have to build a coalition to win. You can't just win with Democratic votes in Arizona.
And just one question, how have things changed since the convention? You played a really major role at the convention. I was really proud of you. I was there that night,
Thank
not
you.
sitting too far away from you. It was not just your speech, it was also just what you did with your fellow Democratic veterans.
We were proud to wear the uniform, and we're proud serving our countries in city halls, state capitals, the U.S. House, and the Senate. These veterans represent the best of our country. We stand united as veterans, Democrats, and patriots to fight for everyone who serves.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought it was a really powerful moment in the convention and also a really interesting part of what became a remarkable Thursday night, right? Thursday night was an unusual night for Democrats in the way it was presented, a wonderful night, a powerful night, but also perhaps a little bit surprising. So talk a little bit about what your role was that night and how you think it all went.
So I spoke on Thursday night, a couple, 3 or 4 before the vice president, which shocked me too, to be honest. Like when you get involved in politics, you never think you're ever going to be doing stuff like that. But it also was very cool that I was able to talk about something that is very near and dear to me, which is being a veteran. And I think a lot of Democratic veterans really appreciate the fact that they got to see other Democratic veterans, because I think there's this stereotype that somehow all veterans are Republicans, and they're not actually. Most veterans are actually independent. And certainly there's a lot of Republicans, but there's a lot of Democrats. And I think the other thing that it answered to is that for many, many years, Democrats felt that it was unfair and also a self-inflicted wound that we didn't try to take the mantle of freedom, the mantle of patriotism, and talking about love for country. And I don't know why that is. I never felt uncomfortable doing that in my world. And I think largely because growing up in an immigrant community, surrounded by people that were, first generation Americans or had just had kids that are first generation Americans, it was very apparent that you love this country. It was odd if you met somebody in my Latino family that said, God, that had anything to say negative about this country. Obviously, there's things that we could fix, but like a true love for this country was always very natural for me. And whenever I entered into politics, it was odd when I met people in Democratic politics who were like, well, I don't know, we should really not go that far. We shouldn't be being so jingoistic. And I was like, I never got it. And so I never had to deal with that kind of issue because I just kind of always ran my own lane and thought about the medium voter, and the medium American voter is very patriotic, loves their country, loves veterans, wants to see the country do better. And I think you finally reflect that on stage, because I think that's where Democrats are. We love this country. We want to keep improving this country. And for that, the fact that we were able to kind of put a stamp on that, I think it was helpful.
Yeah, and Congressman, just kind of weaving those threads together, just this week, the late Senator McCain's son, Jimmy McCain, actually came out and said that he was changing his party affiliation and endorsing and voting for Kamala Harris in this ticket. And obviously the McCain family is a very big and prominent and well-known and beloved family in your home state. And it gets to your kind of early point about, as a true battleground state, you have to be talking to everybody and you have to be supported by folks on both sides. And there's an interesting tension, though, because as our newsroom in Arizona, Copper Courier, has covered very, very closely, you have a very right-wing state legislature in the state, and also a state Supreme Court. I know we're going to get into talking about reproductive freedom and rights because that's such a salient and important issue in this election. But I'm curious kind of what that meant to you. Do you know Jimmy McCain? And he's also in the military, as I understand it. So what impact do you think that might have on some Arizona voters who might still be on the fence?
So I don't know personally Jimmy McCain, but of course, we have a lot of mutual friends. And I think the thing with the McCain family that people forget, it's not a Democrat, Republican, or independent thing. It's a service thing. And the reason people love the McCain family is because they look at them as the kind of premier public servants. This is a family of generational leaders, right? People that have served in government and or in the military for ages. And whenever people talk about McCain, I think from the outside, they think about it kind of a maverick versus political. And it's not that. It's what really endears people is the fact that there's a sense that they're always looking out for the best of this country. And so I think Jimmy McCain would have been respected being a Democrat or a Republican or independent because of that kind of selfless act. But it is it's a courageous thing that he did. It is not easy being a Democrat in Arizona. It's not easy being a Democrat in the business community like he is in Arizona. And it really tells you what's happening with the Republican Party, that you're chasing away such true conservatives to moderate men and women that are, I feel like they have to go to the Democrats because the Republican Party is no longer representing their values. And this is why it's important that we as a party really continue to have a big tent approach to who is in our tent, because the Jimmy McCains need to be able to fit into our tent because they really bring a perspective that we need. And again, it adds that profile that we are here as stewards of democracy, as defenders of democracy, and as patriots first and Democrats second.
That's right. And the final straw, I think, for him, right, because he hadn't come out and said he was going to vote Democratic before now, was the Trump campaign holding a campaign event at Arlington Cemetery. And that was just a bridge too far for him. Did you have thoughts on that event last week?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me. It's very personal for me. I have about 9 friends buried at Arlington, Section 60. And if you're a young guy and you have that many friends buried there, Arlington is very difficult to me to talk about Arlington. Let's just put that up that way. And it's very difficult when I see it get politicized.
Well, if I can just jump in and say, yesterday I did a podcast and my dog barked through a lot of it. Today we have your baby joining us today, Ruben.
Yeah, you get here in the background.
I know. It's the modern world of media that we all live in. And Just wanted to give you a second to take a break there
Yeah,
as
no, thanks. I appreciate it.
in a moment of levity. And I feel the same way. I think we all do. I mean, Trump was, this is, I mean, for a guy who continues to set the bar lower and lower, he set it as low as it can go last week. But let's move on and let's talk about something that I know you're really proud of, which is that you've run one of the most ambitious and aggressive campaigns geared towards the Hispanic community and Latino community that any Democrat has run in the last 20 years. I mean, talk a little bit about that. I know how proud you are. You've worked your butt off on that, and you've innovated. You've done a lot of very innovative stuff. I think our audience would love to know more about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits of growing up working class Latino is that we're the voting population of Latinos is we're working class, and a lot of times, a lot of outreach to Latinos comes from people that don't come from working class, right, or never really grew up with working class Latinos, or are Latino, but kind of went to our Ivy Leagues and just kind of lost touch or never had touch. And like I shouldn't talk shit because I went to an Ivy League, but I spent my most of my really until my 30s like working mid 20s like working with my hands, right? And so I did construction jobs, I worked at meat packing factories, I worked in restaurants, like I did odd end jobs just to help my family kind of get along because we weren't exactly high up on the income scale. And I went to job sites with my cousins, so like I know how to drywall all this stuff. And so I know what they're thinking in terms of politics, but also how to reach to them, because guess what? They're not watching CNN. They're barely going to pick up direct mail. And even like Telemundo Univision, which is a very great medium, a lot of times they're not watching that either. And so you need to go to where they are. So like I remember, for example, I would be working a construction site, and we'd leave the construction site whenever we were done, especially we were working overtime, and we'd go right to the bar and watch a boxing match. That was like a communal thing, right? And so because I'm a boxing fan still, I knew that every around Cinco de Mayo and around September 16th, Mexican Independence Day, September 16th, and Cinco de Mayo, as you all know, a very famous boxer, middleweight champion, Canelo, has a boxing match. So for my campaign, we rented out a boxing gym, sent out notices of that we're having a boxing watch party, put up Gallego signs everywhere, brought in a taco truck, and 300 Latino family members showed up. And we had an opportunity to talk to these men in a very non-confrontational political way about who I am and what I want to do, right? We did younger Latinos especially are very digital, right? So we did a food truck tour with a local food celebrity called Senor Foodie, and we went to all these food trucks, and they actually tried to punk me by having me eat cow's tongue. Thing they don't know is I grew up on a ranch for a little bit, so for those who grew up in a ranch, you eat everything that is edible on an animal when you kill it, right? And so they were very impressed that I was able to eat cow's tongue, cow's lips, and cow cabeza. But this is like the thing that we did that really got me attention with a lot of younger Latino people that just aren't paying attention to politics. Recently, we went to a rodeo. We in Spanish we call it jaripeo. Again, I grew up for a little bit on a ranch in Mexico, so I understand that culture very much so. But to really do outreach to them, we did instead of doing a normal poem card, we turned a very classic Latino family game called Loteria, and we put political symbols on there. And it's going like hotcake style. So people actually are like emailing and texting people at the office asking for some of these cards and lawn signs and stuff and shirts now. So we're going to where they are, and we're making politics about them versus trying to make the politics about politics.
Preach, Congressman. Go where people are. Such a novel concept in our politics. It's really amazing. I know we don't have too much time left. I really want to ask just a question about the role of reproductive rights and freedom in your race in the election in Arizona. Arizona has been at the absolute front lines of this fight since the Dobbs decision. Your state legislature passed an effective abortion ban, and then your state Supreme Court went to uphold a total ban on abortion. That was from 1864. And I know that was overturned, but also there is a ballot measure that was citizen promoted in the state to be able, if it were passed, would protect the rights and freedom for reproductive access and reproductive health care. And, this is obviously a huge salient issue in states all across the country, but because your state has already seen the impacts of far right legislation and agenda related to reproductive freedom, what role do you think it's going to play in terms of turnout and also amongst, I'm very curious, the Latino communities in the state?
Well, among turnout, it's certainly going to help turnout. Women and men do not trust this legislature, right? Because they were perfectly fine when it was an 1864 outright ban, which was a mandatory 2 years sentence for any doctor or provider that provided an abortion. No exception to incest or rape. They were going to be perfectly fine with that if it wasn't for the huge public outcry that they finally repealed it, right? And so, we're not stupid. Arizona voters aren't stupid. They don't trust this Republican-led legislature that if the politics doesn't change, that they're going to go back to some very restrictive law. And of course, we see what happens in other states. And then you have politicians like Kari Lake, who said it was, a great decision. It was in terms of the, Roe v. Wade getting overturned. Said that it was a great law, the 1864 law, and that she's not willing to bend, in the words she said, on abortion rights. So voters are not dumb. They're going to go and protect their rights, young voters especially. And when it comes to what is one of the most important issues when it comes to Latinas, abortion rights. Every poll has abortion rights being the most important things for Latinas. And you got to remember, in Arizona, the average Latino age is 27. So we're a very young population in Arizona. And so for a population, a huge population of Arizona that is young, for their abortion rights to be taken away, in a state, by the way, that largely has always been fairly pro-choice. It's been a very libertarian, freedom kind of state. And this new bent that's come from the right is not sitting well with, your Latina. It's not sitting well with your independents, and certainly not sitting well with Republicans. So this is going to have an effect. And there is I predict that you're going to see a lot of Latino men also engaging in this issue too, because especially those that lead their families, those that are, have daughters, that have wives, this is something that they are worried about. I have heard about it. I'm not sure it's showing up with polling, but they're worried about the fact of their family members' health could be at risk. And that the one of the things that you pride yourself as a Latino male is be able to protect your family and lead your family. And now the government is going to tell you what to do with your family should a very horrible situation arise, right? Or something, an unplanned pregnancy. All these things are being taken away. And so the fact that it's going to be on the ballot is going to drive people out to vote.
Because we are called Closing Strong, what is one thing listeners and our viewers can do to help you or to help get the vote out in Arizona?
Honestly, we just need to continue putting our message out on TV. So if you could donate to Gallego for Arizona. Hopium has been very good on helping us out. We just need to continue pushing strong. Club for Growth just came in for a $12 million hit on me. So we want to make sure that we dominate the airwaves. And please just keep on, getting the message out there. Go follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, everything you can, and really help us get the message out, because we are here, and we're going to make sure we get out every last vote we can.